Before I get into Splatoon 3, I want to state my bias so you squid kids won't crucify me if I call this a grenade or this an ultimate. I'm not what you would call a Splatoon expert or really even a Splatoon fan. I'm approaching this game from an outside perspective as a guy who predominantly plays PC FPS games. Despite being one of the 12 Wii U enjoyers in 2015, I didn't play Splatoon 1 that much. I thought that the game was cool, seeing Nintendo try and tackle the multiplayer shooter market was interesting, but as a lifelong PC shooter guy, cooming ink all over the place didn't hit my cortex the same way that a nasty op flick or a direct rocket does. I still put 20 or 30 hours into the first game, so on paper I can say that I was a veteran of the first Great Squid War, but if I wore that uniform I'm pretty sure it would be grounds for stolen valor. Come 2017 there was rumblings that Squidler was invading Poland and throwing octolings into suspicious looking work camps. Hearing that seemed like a little too much drama for me, so I decided to dodge the draft. It felt like the right call, with many reviewers dismissing the sequel as Splatoon 1.5. Since the first Splatoon never really grabbed me in the way it grabbed a lot of other people, I don't think that a small content update would really change my mind. Besides, at this point in my life I was playing another colorful baby shooter and hadn't touched a console shooter in years. Fast forward to 2022 and Splatoon 3 was interesting me in a way that the first two never did. First, it looked like it brought enough new to the table to be called a true sequel. Second, it's easy for a multiplayer shooter to stand out right now because the entire genre has fucking shit itself. The last few years have been nothing but watching the old titans of this genre overpromise and underdeliver, including watching the sequel to the aforementioned infant daycare burn itself to the ground in real time. So with nothing but disappointment on the horizon, it's time to give the new squid on the block a try. As a PC guy who hasn't touched Splatoon for 7 years, is this the one to make me a fan? And if you're a scrub like me, is now the best time to get into the series? Throughout this video, keep in mind that Splatoon 3 is a live service game, meaning if you're watching this after the return of Squid Christ, there's a pretty solid chance that my criticisms are outdated. Let's start where new players should start Splatoon 3, the campaign. You can think of the campaign as a set of interesting levels that operate as a tutorial while also telling a little story about the new characters. And I'd be lying if I said that the campaign didn't feel a little bit underwhelming because of that setup. I'm gonna blame the trailers for causing me to hop a ride on the hype train, which ended up being a one-way ticket for unrealistic expectations USA. Watching the first reveal trailer sold me on a game that only exists in my head. It was just so visually striking, a large desert wasteland with the Eiffel Tower upside down in the ground, juxtaposed with a massive city so packed with detail it borders on visual noise. My dumb brain started thinking of all the cool ways that you could have a Splatoon game in these environments. Maybe you'd run around large open worlds like Mario Odyssey, completing different tasks for upgrades and stuff, with the train taking you to new hub worlds. I should have expected discrete challenge levels, but the hopium that they were handing out on the train was weapons grade. That's not to say that these areas are completely missing. I mean, they're still in the game, but there's little more to them than what we see in the trailer. The desert area is only the first 15 or so minutes of the campaign without all that much to explore. And the city is super cool, but it has no part in the campaign at all, instead acting as the social hub and the menu system. Regardless, the post-apocalyptic, post-human world of Splatoon is as interesting as it's ever been, creating an inviting world despite the fact that it exists in a world that's been destroyed by a nuclear holocaust which has killed every Homo sapien on the entire planet. Speaking of the end of the world, Nintendo, are you doing alright? At this point, many of the Big N series take place in the post-apocalypse. The Breath of the Wild sub-series, Kirby and the Forgotten Land, Pikmin, Paper Mario, and Splatoon all take place after cataclysmic events either explicit or implied. I wonder if Nintendo is worried about anything that could be going on right now. Instead of my superior train idea, Splatoon 3 only takes place in one large hub world, which I found a little bland looking. Don't get me wrong, Alterna is still a cool environment with different hints and pieces that imply that there were once humans here. I just wish that there was some more varied sections to it, because regardless of which little island you're on, each part of the overworld looks largely the same. Luckily, the levels themselves have a high amount of environmental diversion, with some of these backdrops being absolutely insane. There's interstellar Tower-esque circular cities, Vaporwave-esque city sandwiches, Gravity Rush fanfiction, and my personal favorite, combat arms hacks breaking my mom's computer circa 2009. Which makes me ask the Splatoon fans, why are these themes here? They're cool, but do one of you lore masters have an in-universe reason why my Squid Kid is in the fucking Matrix? Because I'd seriously love to know. This actually brings up another issue that I have with Splatoon 3, which is an issue that it shares with Destiny.
I'll admit, didn't expect this.
Both games have super interesting environments in both visuals and lore. Both games also share the bad habit of hiding their most interesting lore behind text dumps in a menu. If you play through Splatoon 3's campaign and don't go through any of the logs or the scrapbook, you're going to be missing out on a story that is much more interesting than the one that's actually told in the campaign. These optional logs answer exactly why this place exists underground, why there's so many Moai heads all over the place, why there's an ocean deep under the Earth's surface, what the rocket is supposed to be, and even why the sky is blue. Most importantly, these logs explain the true origins of the Squid Kids and the Octolings, and it's a little fucked up, especially for a kid's game. Equal parts horrifying and humorous, the story of Alterna is a solid remember of the destructive nature of man's hubris. It's not all super serious though. These logs straight up talk about a Christ-like squid. It also explains how the new society created a caste system based around the amount of drip that you're flexing. But is the campaign actually worth playing, or is it just a glorified tutorial? Both. It's both. As a scrub, it was a good tutorial into different weapon types, specials, and generally getting used to the movement, which is very different from any third-person shooter. Some of the levels are clearly more on-the-nose tutorial than others, but they all exist to some extent to teach you the mechanics which will be vital in the multiplayer. It also helped me learn the controls, which after years of pointing and clicking, felt about as natural as walking on my hands. Long story short, the campaign acts as a decent introduction to Splatoon 3 and its world. The narrative weakness of the campaign really knocks it down from something I would recommend to those who haven't already bought Splatoon 3. It's not a bad way to spend a couple hours, but under no circumstance should you buy this game for the campaign. Speaking of buying things, if you don't own the Nintendo Switch Online subscription, you shouldn't buy this game at all, because the bulk of your playtime is going to be spent in multiplayer, which outright requires the service. And that's either going to be in Salmon Run for PvE or the lobby for PvP. We'll start with the PvE first because I played less of it and I have less to say about it.
Zombies. Who could have guessed that when the undead first appeared in Call of Duty World at War, that it would lead us here to today?
Fetch me their souls!
I wasn't sure what to think about the Salmon Run mode when I first played it. I've played tons of Horde mode, Killing Floor, and Nazi zombies, so I'm no stranger to that kind of setup. The influences from those modes are pretty apparent from the get-go in Salmon Run. I mean, listen to the sound that happens when you complete a round. It's pretty obvious. But Salmon Run is really its own thing. I would say it has the mindless appeal of something like Nazi zombies, but with an end point to it. It's probably closest to Killing Floor in that regard, also sharing end boss enemies like Killing Floor. In this case, games can end with the appearance of Kohozuna, who serves as the final boss. The way that Salmon Run stands out from any of these other modes is the amount of randomness. The weapon that you get each round is random, the type of wave each round is random, even what parts of the map you can go to are random. This randomness makes each time you boot the mode up a real mystery and goes a long way into help keeping the mode from getting stale. This randomness also makes up for getting rid of the economy system that other wave-based survival games tend to have. There's no exchanging points for weapons or unlocking different parts of the map. You spawn with what you have and you have two objectives: collect eggs and survive. The mode is a lot of fun and a really good way to make some fat stacks to buy more drip. The randomness can bite you in the ass, giving you a near impossible round every once in a while, but that's kind of part of the fun for me. You can't really call a mode a survival mode if you're gonna win every single time you boot it up. Salmon Run stands as a great alternative to the normal PvP and a great distraction when you need a break from homicide. Speaking of murder, let's move on to the PvP because it's where I spent a majority of my time playing, because genociding CPUs isn't quite as entertaining as putting a real child down for a permanent dirt nap.
The force is going to take you off your feet for sure, but it's really no more painful than a punch in the chest.
Why are you getting punched in the chest?
You're going to be fine, baby doll.
The first likable thing about the PvP is the speed. You move fast, shoot fast, kill and die fast, and the games are fast. Turf War, which is the main multiplayer mode, is only 3 minutes long, which means each round is a frantic scramble without any downtime. The short investment also means it's very easy to say just one more game over and over again. From start to finish, you need to be killing squids, cooming all over the map, and looking out for backdoor rat bastards. Initially, I didn't think I'd like Turf War because when I play online games, I become more genocidal than an emperor in Imperial China.
Holy shit.
And on the surface, Turf War doesn't seem like a place where turning kids into an industrial amount of sushi would be advantageous. But the more that I played the mode, the more that I realized that murder is not only encouraged, it's downright required if you want to win. For one, it explodes the other kids into ink, which helps spread your message of peace and love across the battlefield. It also means that the kid you just killed needs to sit out for a little while so you can cover more of the map in ink. Before YouTube nukes this video from orbit, let me make one thing extremely clear. When I say kid, I mean these fuckers. I'm talking about the systematic removal of these unholy abominations, not these unholy abominations. I would put a squid kid 6 feet under on sight, but outside of being forced into a self-defense situation, I would never ever hurt one of these gremlins. Where was I again? Turf War is probably the most noob-friendly game mode I've played in any game ever. Even if you are complete dog shit at aiming, you can still help your team. Every shot you miss is either helpful because it will slow down the dude that you're trying to shoot at, or at the very least, you're going to cover a little bit more of the map in your hot, sticky goo. Turf War is a frantic game of tug-of-war. The best part is that you have no idea who's winning up until the final end of the game. The mode is frantic enough that even if it looks like there's no way you can win, all it takes is one team wipe to put your team back on the map. Thankfully, there's more to this game than just Turf War as a game mode. If spraying your thick, juicy ink is just too easy for you, Splatoon 3 also offers ranked modes. To me, these modes are the real multiplayer content. Adding objectives on top of this game's interesting toolset creates a much more engaging and rewarding multiplayer game than Turf War can ever really provide. These modes allow for a little bit more drama, as not only do you have rank points on the line, if you care about that kind of thing, but these matches are also just longer with the possibility of losing before the time limit even runs out. Turf War can have its back and forth, but ranked is brutal in the way that a team can utterly dominate, ending a game pretty soon after it started. To me, this is all a part of the fun. Nothing like wanting to blame something on someone else just to have to do a little self-reflection and realizing that you lost because you lost. It's what we in the business call a
Skill issue.
Unlike objective game modes in something like COD, where you're technically playing domination, but you're just playing team deathmatch with some more icons on the screen, people actually play the fucking objective here, which makes them play like a very different game than Turf War. Playing in ranked took me from a complete scrub to a complete scrub that understands why people stopped talking to their friends and family after falling deep inside of the splat zone. I just kept coming back for more and more. Even with all of the issues I'm about to go into, it's important to note that I kept coming back to this game time and time again, and will continue to do that. So let's get into the bad stuff. There are some issues with the multiplayer ranging from small annoyances to more serious issues. The first problem that I had is actually another problem that Splatoon shares with Destiny, and that's a poor explanation of the gear system. The perks themselves are self-explanatory for what they do and how you get them, but why certain items can hold more of them isn't really explained, or if it was, I completely missed it. This meant that I was spending a lot of money on items that I didn't really like the look of, but had 4 perk slots, and I needed them because more perks is better, only to then unlock the perks for that gear, and then they aren't actually what I wanted at all, leaving me dripped out harder than a nasal cavity after a coke bump, but without any of the good perks. If I didn't explore the tower to find this guy, I wouldn't have even known about re-rolling gear for better stats, or the gear chunk system. Did I just say explore the tower?
That can't be right.
Get out of my head! Just like Destiny, this means that if you really want ideal gear, you're going to be interacting with RNG a whole bunch, which means that the gear progression is mostly locked behind RNG grind walls, which is fine, but coming from COD or Battlefield, where making an ideal loadout isn't a matter of grinding, it's just a little different. Though the actual impact that gear plays is also very nebulous. Like, I might rock a hat that has a reduction to ink consumption from my main weapon. Seems pretty obvious as to what it does, but it doesn't tell me exactly how effective that reduction is. Furthermore, it doesn't tell me how it interacts with other reductions. Let's say that the reduction is 15%. If I have 2 of that same perk, will it have a 30% reduction? Or maybe a 22.5% reduction due to diminishing returns? I have no fucking idea. Maybe the answer is in the game somewhere, but I found it easier to look up this kind of stuff on the wiki, which to me isn't ideal. I'm not sure if it's just a PC gamer thing in me or just a thing that I have personally, but hiding this information behind ambiguous bars and text bugs me. It's like going to the store, seeing that a game is on sale, and then when you ask the clerk what the discount is, they just hold up a crudely drawn half-filled health bar. Sure, it's technically correct information, but without the information of the original cost of the game, it's pretty much worthless. The answer to all these gear issues is just use a wiki and embrace the RNG grind, which I can deal with. It just feels odd that a game so focused on the competitive environment does so much to obfuscate information about that environment. The matchmaking in Splatoon 3 is fucking awful. The ranked modes aren't as bad, but Turf War feels like it's using a random matchmaking algorithm, and it makes the whole mode super inconsistent. I understand that the game is still pretty early on in learning how skilled each player is, but I've played COD Day 1 and I've never had matches swing this widely in quality. The game can give you 5 or 6 matches where your team is just dropping a fat dookie squarely on the enemy's chest, only to then give you a 10-match run of losses where your team isn't even competitive, with maybe 1 or 2 close matches after the loss streak. Also, why can't I switch gear or leave matchmaking? If you hit this button, you are locked and loaded no matter what happens. You have to put your console to sleep mode just to escape the queue, which, considering how broken the queue can be, sucks pretty badly. You can hit this button and you might be sitting here for 3 or 4 minutes, but if you hit this button, you might find a match in 20 seconds. It's all fucked up. I'm sure that some of this stuff will get fixed over time, but at the moment, it kind of drains the fun out of Turf War, which, speaking of Turf War, Turf War kinda sucks. I know that it's the main mode of the game that I praised a few minutes ago, but I'ma be real with you, Chief. This ain't it. The mode is very simplistic and is super susceptible to last-second turnarounds, which feel great when your team does them, but feel horrible when it happens to you. It's like being in first place in Mario Kart only to lose to the guy who purposely raced in 12th place just so he could farm bullshit items. Some games of Turf War, it feels like the last 30 seconds is all that matters, because if you can successfully get a team wipe in that time, you're nearly guaranteed to win. This can make the game feel mindless and ultimately the minute-to-minute gameplay feel inconsequential. To be clear, I think that's why this is the main mode. It's not made for somebody like me who's interested in more structured and serious play. It's made for the kid who wants to throw on some sick-looking drip and have fun running around the map shooting at other squids. I'm glad that that mode's there for them, but the balance seems pretty off. The modes that do exist for structured play are a little little inconsistent too. Tower control is maybe my favorite mode, but after playing thousands of hours of Hat Uncrating Simulator and Loot Box Jr., this game doesn't really compare to either of those iterations of it. I didn't play a lot of Clan Blitz, but it feels like a weird gimmick version of Turf War where you're throwing footballs around. I don't know. Rainmaker I have no real complaints about, and I did find Splat Zone fun even if it ostensibly is just Turf War. I think I liked Splat Zone because it's like Turf War except much more intense due to driving all of the players to the same section of the map. I think that these modes struggle due to the maps not being designed around them. I get that the modern multiplayer shooter space is all about reusing the maps as best as you can between game modes, but I think that having specific maps for specific modes would go a long way into making these modes more enjoyable. Although even if they did add in new maps for these modes specifically, it wouldn't remedy the problem because Nintendo is Nintendo. I have a pretty healthy disdain for live service games because they gate content behind time walls and paywalls, using FOMO tactics like season passes and in-game events to try and convince you to spend more time and money on the game. This kind of stuff I've more or less learned to accept. I just can't grind to level 100 in every $10 season pass that every game on the planet wants to sell me, but Nintendo takes that idea of time gating from other live service games and injects it into every single part of Splatoon 3. Modes are time gated, maps are time gated, what you can get from the store is time gated. I just don't understand why Nintendo does this. No other multiplayer shooters do this because no other multiplayer shooters have to do this. Splatoon doesn't have to do this. I can't imagine booting up CSGO just to see that I can either play casual on Cobble or defuse on Train for the next 2 hours. I would think that Gaben has lost his fucking mind. Having this kind of hard scheduling is stupid and completely unnecessary. I guess it's better in this game than in Splatoon 2, because in Splatoon 2 they had the gall to lock an entire game mode behind Father Time's hairy balls. I guess this game still does that, but it's during an in-game event and that mode was all but fictional during the last event, so it doesn't count? As an adult, this kind of shit bugs me. The amount of time in a normal day that I can play games is not very long. So if I sit down after a long day only to see that the current offering of maps are ones that I don't love on modes that I don't find the most fun, I have the choice between Salmon Run or just not playing the game. Lord help you if you have a favorite map and mode combination. You think that tower control on Scorch Gorge is Splatoon 3 at its absolute best? Well, get your camera out and savor those 2 hours, bucko, because you are witnessing a once in a fucking generation event. This type of time gating does not make the game feel more alive or keep it from getting stale. Instead, it just removes the ability for players to play the game the way that they want to. Worst yet, it makes the game even harder to get to grips with for a new player like myself, considering the return of maps and modes from previous games. I'm going up against people that could have spent hundreds of hours playing a map and mode combination that I only really have 2 hours to learn at a shot. I sat down and thought about this schedule for a long time, trying to think of why they would do it this way, only to come up with, I think it's stupid, and that's why no other games have anything like it. Truth be told, while all of these other multiplayer issues bothered me, none of them were ever enough to make me want to carpet bomb a small village, until I saw this. My brain has this image saved as Splatoon3.png because it is the default image I think about when I think about this game. In classic kooky, wholesome indie company Nintendo fashion, their online system is completely fucking broken. I cannot and will not excuse Nintendo for this kind of service. First and foremost, Splatoon 3 is a multiplayer game and it needs to have stable connections. Instead, it has connections about as stable as that crazy ex who texts you up at 4:36 a.m. on a Tuesday. On the Wii and the Wii U, I was willing to cut Nintendo some slack. After all, the online service was free. But half a decade after the release of the Switch and the Nintendo Switch Online paid service, to still have connection issues like like this across every single game is fucking unacceptable. Wrapping my head around why GoldenEye on the Wii had better online connectivity than the first-party Nintendo game on the Switch in 2022 is going to give me an aneurysm. Hell, I remember the online experience of Splatoon 1 on Wii U being more stable than this. I love Nintendo, but the fact that we are this far into the online gaming generation and Nintendo continues to stand up on their bed, drop their pants, pinch off a monster shit, and then roll around in their own filth is beyond me. Some of you will say, but the connection in the matches is solid, which is only half true, because once you're in a game which takes significantly longer to find now than it did on launch day, you are unlikely to have the game drop out. But these servers must be running at a tick rate of 1 on a Raspberry Pi 2 behind a Denny's, because the amount of trades and insta-kills in this game are absolutely insane. If you're strictly a casual player, none of this will probably matter to you or bother you in the slightest. If you're coming from Face It 128 tick CSGO lobbies, this connection might make you burst into flames. Of all the issues in this game, this is the largest one, and sadly, it's the one that I don't see getting fixed. The inconvenient truth of the matter is that Nintendo is still horrendous at online infrastructure. But on my exclusive visit to Nintendo, I did see why this could be a problem. When I looked at their gear, I saw that they were still using Netscape Navigator as their primary browser. So with all that said, can I still recommend Splatoon 3? Well, I'm still playing it enough that I found it kind of hard to make time to make this video, so yes. I think it really does depend on who you are. If you liked the first 2 games, you likely already own this one and are enjoying it. If you didn't like those games, I highly doubt that this one's going to change your mind because it is very similar to those other ones. If you've never played them and the game looks interesting, I do think it's worth a shot. I didn't expect to like it and I am enjoying it quite a bit. It is worth noting if you're coming from a more hardcore competitive FPS perspective and looking to Splatoon 3 to be the next competitive game in your lineup, I would look elsewhere. The Denny's dumpster servers and general network performance will absolutely hinder any kind of competitive experience that you could have. But if you're looking for a casual game with a lot to unlock, a very passionate community with some fucking crazy impressive artists in it, and a good mix of PvP and PvE, this is worth a shot. Oh, and cards. This game has a card game if you're into that. I think I'll stick with this and see where it goes. Considering I've already put more time into this than the first game, I think that's a positive review enough. And at the end of the day, I feel like it's my duty to play, because if I don't lead the glorious Squid Kid genocide, then who will?
That's right, we're Japanese.